In this lesson, I'm going to give you an overview of the effect categories inside After Effects. To explain all of the effects individually would just take forever and be really impractical. So what I'm going to do is just give you a general sense of the various effect categories and then point you to a resource where you can check up on individual effects and see how they work. So to follow along, go to Working Files and go to After Effects Projects and go on down to 1302 Effects Overview. This is the comp we worked on in the previous lesson. I'm just using it kind of as a backdrop for this one. Effects and Presets is over here in this panel, and this is where virtually all the effects are inside After Effects. So I'm going to expand the view a little bit by pulling it up like so. These are the various categories here. To get a better understanding of all these effects, I think it's a good idea to go to the Help file. And the way to access Help is by going Help, After Effects Help, or simply pressing the F1 key to go there. And that takes you to the internet here, to this After Effects Help page. This is the dynamic page. They're updating this all the time, so it may look a little bit different to you than it does right now, but it should look more or less like this. And there is one category here called Effects and Animation Presets. Let me just scroll down to show you that. Here we go. And inside here, there's this overview. But what I'm interested in is the effect list. These are all the various categories here, but if you go to the effect list, you get a sense of the insane number of effects here. Let me scroll through here and just get an idea. They're just all these effects. It's just amazing how much stuff is inside After Effects. And as you scroll through here, you might notice something called CC effects. See these guys there? CC stands for Cycor, which is a third party that provides all these great plugins. These are the ones that really just do fun stuff. Most of the effects that come with After Effects that sort of are standard tend to be kind of, functional things, but CC tends to be kind of wild and wacky. I'm going to talk about the CC effects in the next lesson. And you notice that they don't have links here because you go to that one page where all of them are located, and then you can see them all listed there. So we're going to bypass them here. Let's just scroll up here a little bit, though, and kind of see how this thing works. I'll go to the Blur and Sharpen Effects section. And there is no link here at the top for the Blur and Sharpen Effects page. I really think there should be, but there isn't. Nevertheless, if I click on, let's say, Fast Blur, that takes me to the Fast Blur effect listing inside that page on Blur Effects, Blur and Sharpen Effects. Go down to Fast Blur here for just a second. And it usually says a few things about the effect. Sometimes they're very detailed. Sometimes they're kind of generic. The Fast Blur effect tends to be a little generic. But tucked away inside here are all kinds of little tutorials and articles and all kinds of stuff about these various effects. Plus, you get to see examples of how they work. So this is just a really great resource if you're trying to find out more about specific kinds of effects. So let's head on back to After Effects now. What I want to do now is just run through a few of these groups. And we're going to run on down right to Blur and Sharpen. And there are so many different kinds of Blur and Sharpen effects. But we'll just try the Fast Blur here. Drag that over to this Watermelon Harvest. There's Fast Blur. And we've looked at this before. You can adjust the blurriness like that. I'll delete that and put someone else in there, put on Radial Blur, and see it's different. It has a different kind of controller. You control where the radial is going to start. You can also control it here in the screen with this little target like that. And you can control the intensity of it, how much blur are you going to have here. And you can animate all these guys as you'd expect. All right, so all kinds of blur and sharpen effects there. You notice those CC guys showing up here. Again, I'll talk about them in the next lesson. So I'll delete Radial Blur. Let's close Blur and Sharpen and move on down to Channel. Channel looks at the color channels. Typically, you can swap, let's say, red with blue or something like that and cause some interesting effects. The most obvious one is Invert that creates this photographic negative look there like that, which can be adjusted in terms of how much you blend with the original, like so. We'll get rid of that. Color correction has a lot of effects, many of which are automatic, and I'm not a real fan of automatic effects. They also have things here that you can do using another effect. I'll scroll down here to show you something that's included with After Effects called Synthetic Aperture SA Color Finesse 3. This is a huge color correction program, essentially, that runs as a separate program, but that you access it from within After Effects. And this is the plugin I'm going to feature when I talk about color correction in an upcoming lesson. Let's scroll back up here, though. There are some fun things in here, certainly. And the things that are worth looking at. Let's go down here to change the color, for example. If I apply that one, I can, let's say, pick a color and we'll change it. Let's say blue to something else like that. So you can take a color in here and change it to something else. Kind of fun. So there are a few other things here that are just kind of fun to play with. And Hue and Saturation is the one that I use a lot when I want to apply overall color change to something. You can use Hue and Saturation as the way to do that. All right, let me just get rid of these two guys. Clicking on them and deleting them. All right, let's move on down a little bit here. Distort, there's all kinds of ways to do what you'd expect. And most of them you see are Cycor. Again, they're the fun ones. But I'm going to go on down here a little bit to Turbulent Displace. You apply that and look what happens right away. You get this lovely twisting thing. Pretty cool. And you can adjust, obviously, the size of the twists and things like that. So when you go to distort, you can expect to see effects that look like that. Expression controls are to be used with something called expressions. I'll be talking about expressions in an upcoming chapter, so we'll just skip expression controls here. Generate tends to actually turn a layer into something else. So if you've got this lovely video and you apply a generate effect to it, frequently it just destroys that effect. So if I take cell pattern, for example, and apply it to that, it's gone. You have now destroyed that clip. So just be aware that if you're applying it to something, that's a good way to get rid of it. So typically you make a solid layer, then apply a generate effect to that solid layer. But all is not lost when you work with some of these guys, like the 4-color gradient, for example. You put that on there, puts those 4 colors on it. But then you can blend it and change the opacity. If I change the opacity, you're thinking it's not doing anything. But that's because the blending mode's set to none. If I change it to normal, then you can start seeing the layer that this thing was applied to. So some generate effects don't totally destroy something. They do let you see parts of it like that using blending modes or opacity changes. All right, let's move it down the line here a little ways farther. Keying lets you key out something to make some area of the clip transparent. Typically, you key things out based on color or opacity. The granddaddy of all keying effects, though, is Key Light here. This is the good one. This is the guy that's a very powerful tool inside After Effects. This lets you key out basically any color. Typically, it's used with folks who shoot on green screens or chroma key blue, but you can use it for anything. I can make all these leaves transparent, for example, by just picking that color out of them and making them all go away. Now they're all transparent. You see the checkerboard behind there. So Key Light is just an amazing keying tool, but there are other ones here as well. All right, let's move on down past keying. We'll skip matte. Noise and grain has all kinds of things that actually make your clips look bad. Who wants to do that, right? But there are all kinds of fun things to do here. The go-to tool here, though, is Fractal Noise. Click on Fractal Noise. It creates this amazing fractal look that you can evolve like that and have it animate. It's really cool. And you can see your clip underneath it if you want to. You can drop the opacity. Also use blending modes. It always does it in black and white like this. So if you want to add color, you need to use some other means to add color, like tritone, for example, which is a color correction effect. Click on that and delete that. All right, we'll close noise and grain. We'll skip obsolete because these guys, in fact, are obsolete. Perspective has things that we've seen before, drop shadow and bevel alpha. Go past there. But on the simulation, simulation has a lot of CC effects here, lots of Cycor effects, and these tend to be very similar to the generate effects in that they basically take something and completely change it into something else. So you typically don't apply it to a video clip that you want to see. Close that one down. We'll go on down to stylize, and that'll be the last one we'll look at here. See a number of other CC effects here. We'll scroll on down here and we'll take a look at, let's say, find edges, which look very much like an effect you've seen inside Photoshop if you work with Photoshop. A lot of these guys started their lives as Photoshop filters, but filters are static. These guys you can animate over time if you want to, like that. Or mosaic for that matter. Turn off find edges. There's mosaic at work. You can change the number of blocks, like so. So there you have it. That's just a basic overview of most of the different effect categories here inside After Effects.